Welcome back in. Hope all of you are having a fantastic Friday, wherever you may be across this great country, this great land. We are joined now by Lance Taylor at the Lance Taylor, 94.5 Jocks down in Birmingham. Comes on a lot with us, hasn't been on in a while. Appreciate you getting up early, my man. What is the vibe in Alabama as Alabama gets ready for Texas A&M? And before I even ask you that question, actually, I'm going to start with this one. Can you believe it's been 8 years since Johnny Manziel came into Tuscaloosa as a 17-point underdog and led the Aggies to the upset victory and basically made himself a legend? Can you believe it? Does it seem like 8 years to you?
No. And I remember so much about that day. I remember where I was watching the game, what I did after the game. I mean, and, you know, when you put it all together like that, it really seems like it was a year or two ago. But Johnny Manziel does seem ancient times ago. But I don't know if you realize this, but since, you know, that first meeting when they were SEC rivalries, back in 2012, that win, Bama's won 7 straight. In the last 3 in Tuscaloosa, they've won by an average of 46-17. These games haven't even been close.
How much pressure do you think MIbo Fisher is feeling coming off of the 17-12 win over Vanderbilt? This is a guy they're paying $75 million guaranteed, $7.5 million a season. And really, I believe I looked at the numbers. I think he's 10-7 right now in the SEC in his first 17 games. Looks to be middle of the road, let's be honest, in the SEC West. Hasn't really sent a message that A&M is in any way in a different shape than they were without him. What do you think? How would you assess MIbo so far, and do you think he's starting to feel a little bit of pressure?
Yeah, I mean, I would go C-. You know, year one, you win 9 games and you drop back to 8 wins. And look, before COVID and the abbreviated schedule, the 10-game SEC schedule, you know, I thought with what A&M had coming back before all the opt-outs, I thought it was a 9 or 10 win season just based on schedule. And then when I saw the redo on the schedule, I thought they got hit the hardest, and I started to look at it, and I was like, you know, probably more like a 5-5. But if I'm an A&M fan, I'm pissed. You got resources, you're recruiting well. It's a guy that's won a national championship. You mentioned the $75 million contract. You've got the most experienced quarterback in the league, which, by the way, seems to regress every single game. You go on the road against Vanderbilt as a 30-point favorite, and you win by 5, and even that final possession was disgusting. You're trying to run the clock out. You fumble on a 4th and 1. You almost lose to a true freshman quarterback in Ken Sills, to a Vanderbilt team that's just not good. I don't know what's going on with A&M. I have zero expectations they'll even keep this game close Saturday in Tuscaloosa.
Okay, let's talk a larger picture here because I do think it's kind of fascinating in the world of college football, and we'll get to the NFL in a minute. But Oklahoma losing. What's the status of the Big 12, even though Texas found a way to get to win 63-56 over Texas Tech? Do you have any faith in the Big 12 teams being able to put things together and be in the playoff?
No, not at all. And I'm still shocked that Texas was able to come back 15 down. I had that game on a top left TV. I had written it off, and then Texas scores and gets a perfect onside kick, and then I tune back in. But without Sam Ehlinger, who seemed like a one-man wrecking machine, Chris Ash just doesn't have this defense where it needs to be yet. I mean, for Texas Tech to be able to go for 56, and Alan Bowman was up and down the field on the Longhorns, and then you look at Oklahoma. A lot of people thought Iowa State at 12-1 was going to be a dark horse to maybe win the Big 12 this year. They obviously lose to a Sun Belt team in Week 1. Now, so we've got an elimination game already in Week 5 between Oklahoma and Iowa State. And based on what I saw from Spencer Rattler in that second half against Kansas State, by far the worst of the 4 quarterbacks Lincoln Riley has had, I just don't think either one of those teams is going to win out. So I'm just not sure what happens with the Big 12. And now that the Pac-12 is back playing, the Big 10's back playing, this might be the year the Big 12 gets totally shut out.
Let's go into the actual games themselves that are taking place on the field this weekend. What to you, and Dub and I always talk about this and do kind of a draft on Friday, what to you is your must-see college football game this weekend? Is there any one that you're like, man, this is the most intriguing to me by far, I absolutely can't miss it? To me, it's Georgia-Auburn, right? Like, I just really want to see what Auburn's got. Georgia was very mediocre at the quarterback position. They now get JT Daniels back, but is he going to be ready to step in and play at a high level? And meanwhile, Auburn is just perpetually – I'm perpetually kind of bewildered by Auburn football. Like, you never really know, it seems to me, what you're going to get every time they take the field. Truly, anything can happen. To me, this is the best game that's scheduled on a day with decent games come Saturday. between Auburn and Georgia.
Yeah, I agree. You know, the 125th marking of the D-South's oldest rivalry, I think it is the most intriguing game, and I think you're dead on. You know, Georgia was so bad. I mean, to be trailing Arkansas, team that hasn't won an SEC game since October of 2017. Can you imagine being an Arkansas fan and you have to go 3 years and you haven't won an SEC game, and it doesn't look like there's one even in sight that you're going to win this year? But Georgia to be down 7-5 at halftime. Stetson Bennett comes in. He gets a little comfortable. I've talked to two different people kind of close to the Georgia program. One says that JT Daniels won't play this weekend. One says he will. I don't know what to believe. I don't know if they're going to be able to beat that Auburn defense without JT Daniels. And I look at Auburn, that 29-13 win over Kentucky. I thought it was a lot closer than 29-13 play. I'm sure you were watching. Kentucky got jobbed, a touchdown there at the end of the first half. They would have been up 8 points. To me, that's a totally different game. Maybe I'm bitter because I had Kentucky plus 6.5. But I wasn't completely blown away with this Auburn offense. I mean, Seth Williams is really good, but when Bo Nix is your leading rusher in a Gus Malzahn / Chad Morris offense, that is a problem. And Kentucky's got a really good, solid defense, but Georgia might have the best defense in college football. So, you know, I think the quarterbacks, what will come into play this weekend, can Bo Nix be consistent? He's a guy that has gone now 218 attempts without throwing an interception. He's not a great quarterback, but he doesn't turn it over. And on the other side, what are we going to get from Georgia? Is it going to be Stetson Bennett or is it going to be JT Daniels? I think JT Daniels and Todd Monken's offense with some of those weapons, I think Georgia can be dangerous, but they've got to get quarterback right.
Yeah, and if they don't, does 7 seem steep to you?
You know, it seems steep, but for, you know, and another thing you look at is Gus Malzahn just can't beat Georgia. He's 2-6 against Georgia. He's better against Saban. He's 3-4 against Saban. He's 2-6 against Georgia. And going back to that game last year, game wasn't even close going into the fourth quarter. Georgia was up 21-0. Auburn got a couple of breaks. They cut it to 21-14, had an opportunity to tie that thing up. For whatever reason, Auburn just can't beat Georgia right now. If you told me JT Daniels is 100% starting, although the kid hasn't played in 13 months, I'd lay the 6.5. Otherwise, I might stay away from it.
Georgia hasn't won in Athens since 2005. Auburn hasn't won in Athens since 2005. Georgia not winning in Athens since 2005. That'd be a heck of a story. By the way, speaking of not winning in a long time, can you believe that the Minnesota Twins have lost 18 straight postseason games? That's one of the most remarkable stats that I have ever heard in the history of sports.
Ever.
Purely from it's almost like losing 18 straight coin flips, all having them turn up on either heads or tails. It's almost impossible to lose 18 straight baseball games, period. Even more so when you're a good enough baseball team to make the postseason, which means you win a lot of games already, right? We're not talking about the worst team in baseball. And even the worst team in baseball, it would be hard to lose 18 in a row. For a playoff caliber baseball team to lose 18 in a row is maybe the most improbable sporting result I've seen in my life.
I don't disagree with you. And, and it's so different in this abbreviated 60-game sprint, and now the playoffs expanded to 16 teams. But they're still playing an Astro team that maybe was the biggest disappointment in the 60-game season, a team that was under 500, and you're a heavy favorite in this series. It's got to be mental. I don't think the Twins were as good this year as that team that won over 100 games last year and led the majors in home runs. But still, I mean, and they can't score runs, but 17 consecutive postseason losses, that's nearly impossible.
Yeah, it is almost unbelievable. All right, let's go to the NFL. First of all, Titans-Steelers gets rescheduled, and I think that works tremendously in the Titans' favor because A.J. Brown wasn't going to play this weekend. Taylor Lewan probably wasn't going to play this weekend. Now both would theoretically be able to play against the Steelers. But it raises a larger question for the NFL, which is how many positive tests mean that a team can't play? And or I guess larger context maybe, when do those positive tests have to arise? And what I've been told, I don't know if you've heard similar talk, LT, is that the NFL is very prepared to push back the postseason. They could start the playoffs later. They could start the Super Bowl later. Basically, they've got the whole month of February to work with. The television networks aren't going to complain about having football for a longer season, right? That's the whole purpose of going to 17 games and prolonging the process. The television networks didn't get their preseason football games this year. So if they have to add a few extra weeks to the regular season in order to get all these games in, there are not going to be any complaints. But it is kind of a little bit wacky that the Titans would get positive tests and end up benefiting as a result.
Yeah, and this is a situation, it's unlike Major League Baseball where we had the Marlins outbreak and the Cardinals early on, and people thought for a minute that Rob Manfred might shut that thing down. You could get away with not playing some of those regular season games. You can't do that in the NFL, and especially when we're talking about two undefeateds, two teams that most likely will be in the postseason. We can't just wipe that game away. I was a little surprised, and maybe I'm in the minority on this, being played. I was hoping we'd get maybe pushed to a Tuesday night game, which would have been exciting. But, when you get, 3 to 5 positive tests, and I know the numbers are much different from 53-man rosters to what you get close to 100-plus when you look at a college team, but Virginia Tech had 23 positive tests last week, and they go out and roll without their starting quarterback. Kansas State and Chris Kleiman didn't know if they were going to be able to field a team last week, and they win as 28-point underdogs against Oklahoma. So I'm just a little surprised that the NFL didn't find a way to get this thing played, but I agree with you. I don't think it's a huge deal if they have to push the season and the postseason back a little bit.
What kind of verdict would you give your Rams through 3 weeks?
Yeah, Clay, so I heard you, and I brought this up to you last, maybe a couple of Mondays ago, and when the Rams were sitting at 2-0, you said you believe they were the fourth best team in the NFL. And, watching them, I think Sean McVay has done such a great job at calling plays the first couple of weeks, and then they go to Buffalo. I didn't have an expectation they were going to win that game. They get down 28-3. Buffalo, to me, is a top-5 team. I don't think there's any doubt. And then the Rams start creeping back, and they take the lead. And I exerted so much energy as a fan into that game, and to have it completely ripped away from me on an awful call there. And I know Saints fans
they're not going to be sympathetic, or even Cowboy fans who feel like you guys got a pretty beneficial call late in that game too.
Yeah, but when you start to look at the Rams' schedule now, they're about to they obviously get the New York Giants, who might not win a game this year unless they got the Jets on the schedule, which they don't. They're going to win that game. San Francisco's extremely banged up right now. Seattle's not playing great defense, so I think they'll be able to score with the Seahawks. I think Arizona is a little overranked. I think we saw Kyler Murray, and the 3 turnovers should have been 4 this past weekend. I feel good about the Rams, better about the Rams right now than I did going into the season. That offensive line, they're playing a lot better. If the defense can ride it a little bit, Aaron Donald's obviously a one-man wrecking crew. I feel good about the Rams right now, though.
All right, so I think the best game in the NFL this weekend, given the fact that Steelers-Titans is not going to happen because that was the only matchup of 2 undefeated teams, I think the best game, to me, the one that I want to watch the most, is Patriots-Chiefs. And I believe that Mahomes on Monday basically served notice that the NFL is his league for the next decade, and that any kind of comparison between him and Lamar Jackson, even though Lamar Jackson won the MVP and everybody's trying to turn that into a rivalry, that in Mahomes' mind, it's not really a rivalry. He's now 3-0 straight up against Lamar Jackson, threw 4 touchdowns, ran for 1. But Cam and the Patriots are sitting there at 2-1. What do you expect to see in this game? The Chiefs around a 6.5 or 7-point favorite. I think the Chiefs get it done. What about you?
Well, Andy Reid has averaged more points against Bill Belichick than any other coach in his career. I mean, he's averaging almost 28 points per game against Bill Belichick. And Reid is one of the better play callers along with Bieniemy in football. And you look at Pat Mahomes, and I guess it's good news for the Patriots. They're out of month of September. I'm sure you saw the numbers. He's never lost in September. He's never thrown a pick in September. I mean, just out of this world numbers. But the strange thing here, New England, since they won that first Super Bowl 36 back in 2001 with Tom Brady, they've only been 7+ point underdogs 3 times. And so this is kind of rare air for the Patriots to be in this situation. And look, and I think they're good with Cam Newton. I don't think they're great. I kind of liked Las Vegas last week to beat them. That obviously didn't happen. But I just think Kansas City's too good right now. I think they got a little bit of a scare against the Chargers, just kind of had that off week. But for them to look like they did Monday night against Baltimore, Kansas City far and away looks like the best team in the NFL to me.
Who's winning the divorce so far? We're talking to Lance Taylor, 94.5 Jocks down in Birmingham. Who's winning the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady divorce? Because Brady's Bucks look pretty good shape to take down the Chargers, given a lot of the Charger injury issues. That would get the Bucks to 3-1, keep them in first place in the NFC South. Like I just said, I think that the Patriots are going to go on the road and lose against the Chiefs. We'll see exactly what happens. But how would you assess the divorce between Brady and Belichick so far? Who's winning the post divorce?
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's got to be the Bucks, and I think it's exterior factors. I think you look at, I mentioned the Bills. I think the Bills are just a better team than the Patriots. The Bills look like a 12-4 team to me. So, therefore, I think the Patriots are going to be second in that division, and I don't know if they end up getting a wild card or not. And then you look at the Saints and how they're regressing right now, and I don't think, like Alvin Kamara has been great, scoring 2 touchdowns in at least 5 straight games, but they're using him too much with Michael Thomas being out. And if Michael Thomas doesn't come back 100%, Drew Brees is not going to be close to the Drew Brees that we all recognize for the last couple of years. So I think the Saints have taken a step back. The Falcons are a complete disaster. So are the Carolina Panthers. I give Matt Rule credit for winning this past week without Christian McCaffrey. But that division has become so bad overnight that it's going to be the Bucs division. And again, on the other side, I just think the Bills are a better team right now. So I think Tom Brady will end up winning out this year in that divorce.
The NBA Finals. The Lakers, it appears, are in tremendous shape to go ahead and win the NBA Finals. We talked about this a little bit on Thursday's show. I don't know that the NBA Finals have ever felt less relevant to me in my entire life as a sports fan. I think part of it is the calendar. I think also many people have been turned off by the NBA's overt political messaging. Does it feel to you like in your life the NBA Finals have never been more of an afterthought as well?
Well, I got to say this, growing up a Lakers fan, and I haven't seen the Lakers in the finals since 2010.
Yep.
And I used to be one of those guys back in the 90s. I would go to, before there were the major sports bars, I would go to a local sports bar that had the big satellite dishes, and I would make them dial up a Lakers Supersonics game. And I'd have like a 20-inch right by my table, and I'd watch the entire thing. And then when the NBA League Pass became a thing, I'd watch all 82 regular season Lakers game. I can't tell you. I would burn sage when the Lakers got to the postseason if they were down for good luck for the Lakers to be able to come back. It was hard for me to get engaged in last night's game. And I don't know if it's a LeBron thing where I'm just not a fan of LeBron's right now, but I'm just not into it. And, it's sad that I picked the Heat a couple of weeks ago to win the NBA Finals, and they're not now with this tragic injury. It's just not going to happen. But in spots, I kind of caught myself pulling from Miami in that game. It's just a weird feel, Clay. I don't know what's going on with me. Because if you ask anybody, I got Lakers gear. I grew up a Lakers fan. I drive to Atlanta every time the Lakers play in Atlanta. And I feel kind of guilty. I feel bad, but I'm just not 100% engaged.
Yeah, it is kind of wild. What do you attribute that to? Do you think it's partly football? Like if this, I think it's big schedule.
Yeah.
I think the NBA gets a lot of benefit and attention because in May and June, there's nothing else really going on in sports. Even if you're a baseball fan, it's kind of like the early stages of baseball, so it's hard to really draw direct results. And now I think going head-to-head like they are with the NFL and college football, and even, I don't know about you, we talked about this yesterday on the show too, how great is this MLB Madness idea, right? Like I think they have stumbled into genius here in Major League Baseball. It took them a long time to get started, but I loved the idea of noon to midnight Major League Baseball games. I think it's amazing.
Well, I agree with you. Look, and I think 60 games, they're never going to do it because of the money situation, but if you could find a way to start Major League Baseball that first week of April and get it done by Labor Day and have a similar format and have wall-to-wall baseball, I'm all in. And you're right. I think it is the timing of the NBA Finals right now because if this was in June, there's nothing else going on. You got Major League Baseball, but I would be excited and every other night watching a finals game. But right now with football, I'm just way too focused on that. And, I'm even thinking about game 2 of the NBA Finals. I got BYU and La Tech on. I know I've got a play coming up on that game. So if I've got one big TV, am I going to watch, the Bulldogs and the Cougars, or am I going to actually watch game 2 where Dragic's not even going to play and Adebayo might not even play?
Yeah, it is kind of tough to think about as we go forward. LT, I appreciate the time, my man. Enjoy the games. By the way, How great was it that the SEC got all 14 teams and 7 games in their opener? I continue to knock on wood furiously because anything can happen in 2020. But that week getting done and being able to pull off the entire slate of games, it was a lot of fun to watch.
Well, it was, Clay. And on top of that, you had a lot of games that came down to it. We mentioned the MIbo Fisher situation, but Tennessee, your Volunteers, they got a break there on that kind of muff punt.
Yes.
With under a minute and a half to go. But, Mississippi State, just the story there when we're talking about the greatest collegiate team of all time, maybe, in LSU 15-0 last year. And obviously a lot of defections there. But for Mike Leach, a guy that we've always wanted to see in the SEC, a guy that
we've debated. You and I have literally debated Leach and how he'd do in the SEC, not in like a contentious way, but just like this is a great bar debate that college football fans have had for years.
Clay, they threw a pick six early. They were -2 in turnovers, 7 penalties. They rushed for 9 yards. They were 15.5-point underdogs, and they won by double digits on the road.
Yeah, I know. It's
I don't
remarkable.
Even know what to say.
It's
really
truly
is.
remarkable,
Right.
and he's so much fun.
The defense was good.
Yeah, he's so much fun to watch. We had him on the show Monday. What do you think, by the way? Obviously, the debut went far better than anybody could have ever anticipated on the Mississippi State side. But I came on Monday, and I don't know if you've thought of this analogy, but I said 2019 LSU. Could it be 2010 Auburn? Both of them with a heroic, transcendent, unbelievable quarterback performance. Cam Newton in 2010 for Auburn, Joe Burrow 2019 for LSU. What happened after Cam left was the foundation of the Auburn program wasn't very strong and everything kind of collapsed. I wonder on some level how much of that 15-0 team was Joe Burrow. If LSU has a average starting quarterback in college, are they 8-4? I don't think that's a crazy presumption.
Yeah, look, and a lot of people will say the combination of Burrow and Brady last year.
Yeah,
but
right.
I think the two greatest seasons we've ever seen are by individual players, 2010 Cam Newton and what we saw last year with Joe Brady. And I thought LSU would take a couple of steps back. I did not expect them to lose to Mississippi State. When you start to look at the schedule now, LSU might be a 5-5 team, and that would be remarkable considering on how they recruit.
Yes.
They've still got, it's one thing with, from LSU to Auburn. Auburn is still a top 25 program, but LSU they roll guys out into the NFL, and they've still got a ton of talent.
No doubt. LT, enjoy the games this weekend, NFL and college. I know we'll be doing the same. Talk to you again soon.
Yeah, Clay, always fun, man. See you.
That's Lance Taylor at the Lance Taylor on Twitter.